Hey there, Rabanzo here. My guest for this episode is mindset coach and musician mentor Suz Paulinski of the Rockstar Advocate. We talk about the DIY Musician Conference, her upcoming MusicPreneur Mindset Summit, and the one thing she recommends to musicians who seek a better way. Let's do it. This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. I want to say thanks to everyone who supports this podcast. The whole thing is intended to help independent musicians. Help them through a curation of expertise of other musicians and industry professionals. If you're loving the podcast, if you support the cause, visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the various ways that you can offer your support. And by the way, if you're a listener of the podcast, I consider you a supporter, especially if you share it with a friend. Again, that's unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn how you can get involved as a supporter. Have you heard of Bandzoogle? They power websites for musicians around the world, including Grammy winners. Their easy-to-use system will get you online fast. They have tons of mobile-friendly templates to help you customize your design and site content. It's built for musicians by musicians. Bandzoogle makes it easy to sell merch, grow your email list, integrate your socials, and they offer support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans are affordable. Go to bandzoogle.com to start your 30-day free trial. Use the promo code Rabanzo to get 15% off your first year. Again, that's bandzoogle.com, promo code Rabanzo, R-O-B-O-N-Z-O. Suz was kind enough to have me as a guest for a forthcoming episode of her MusicPreneur Mindset Podcast. You should definitely check that out, her podcast that is, and of course my episode when it comes out, I think in November. And I thought she'd be a great guest for this podcast, and she was. If you're kicking around the idea of a mentor or coach, listen into our conversation and get to know who Suz is, what she's all about, where she's coming from. Get to know and like her. You're going to appreciate what she says. Her MusicPreneur Mindset Summit in Long Beach, New York is happening September 26th through 28th of this year, 2019. The Unstarving Musician is a proud sponsor of that event. Or I should say the Unstarving Musician Podcast is a proud sponsor of that event. Learn more about the event at therockstaradvocate.com. Here's me and Suz, the Rockstar Advocate. Thanks again for joining me, Suz. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start off by asking you about the DIY Musician Conference, which I know you were a recent featured speaker, and I just wanted to hear the debrief from you real quick.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite conferences. I love what CD Baby does. It's, one of the more impactful conferences where people really walk away with a lot of knowledge. And so I always have a great time there. I've been speaking and mentoring at their conferences for the last 4 years. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, and this year they had Questlove and DMC. And I'm born and raised Queens, so I could not have asked for better special guests to gawk at and have my jaw on the floor the whole time. But yeah, it was really great.
Did you say okay, so I heard Questlove, and did I hear Run DMC, or did I hear something different?
DMC from Run DMC. Yeah, he was there. Yeah, one third of the full trio, but one half of the living members. Yeah, it was really something.
That's nice. And you said Queens? Did I hear that part right? Or did you say Queens? Okay. I know both of these guys, obviously, but are they from that area?
Well, Questlove is from Philly, but now he's based in New York for the Jimmy Fallon show with the Roots, and DMC is our guy.
Sweet. Well, that's nice. How exciting for you. Well, I wish I could have been there. I think that you gave it more street cred by being there, so perhaps I'll make sure to go next time. I don't really know why, and to hear you say it's one of your favorite conferences says a lot. And I don't know why why it really hasn't been more on my radar, but at any rate, I'll have to go. And do you have something exciting, speaking of events, you have something exciting happening at the end of September 2019 as we're recording today, the MusicPreneur Mindset Summit. And we've been talking about this for various reasons, you and I lately. Do I remember right? This is the third annual?
Yes, it is. It's the second time we'll be hosting it in New York. We hosted in Long Beach, New York. It's just a quick train ride from Penn Station. And yeah, I never thought I'd be hosting conferences. It's not something that I had planned, but it kind of came organically 3 years ago, and it's just grown from there. It's very intimate. It's more of like a retreat rather than a conference, and it's all about just putting in the work and really seeing yourself as a musicpreneur. I mean, I love CD Baby, and I have nothing against the DIY musician title, but I always think it's important to understand what DIY means. And it doesn't mean do it alone, and it doesn't mean do everything at the same time. So I started using the term musicpreneur a few years back just to get more in the mindset of understanding that you are an entrepreneur as a musician, or even as anybody working in the industry. Even if you work for another company, you have to think like an entrepreneur and really understand multiple income streams, understand how to create a funnel to onboard new fans or new clients. And, you know, being in this industry over 15 years, the last 5 have been great because I hired a coach and I learned how to become an entrepreneur. But my businesses before then really didn't get off the ground because I knew the music industry so well. I studied it for many, many years. I worked in it, and I really understood all the different departments, but I didn't understand entrepreneurship. And that's something so different. It's such a different skill set that doesn't really get addressed. And you can know all you need to know about Spotify and Instagram and all of those things, but if you don't understand how to carry out all of those things as an entrepreneur, you can get really lost in it.
Yeah, and what a beautiful point you bring up with the DIY distinction or granularity or whatever we want to call it. You know, it's funny. I say often that, so I have this other podcast, which I don't know if we've talked about it, and it's for small businesses and sales professionals. And I'm very often saying that independent musicians have pretty much the same problems and challenges that small business owners, the entrepreneurial and sales professionals have. But the DIY and the DIY musician thing has, I've never really thought about it until you said what you said. It has a really heavy connotation about going it alone, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think we all feel that, you know, it's all, I have to do this. I have to show that I'm, you know, that I can handle it all. And yet the funny thing is, all I hear from musicians constantly is, can't you do it? Can't somebody do this for me? When can I have a team? If I had a team, my you know, problems would go away. And yes, to an extent, I mean, you do need a team, and you don't always have to wait till you have the budget for it. There are ways to offload certain things and automate certain processes before you start hiring people. But even before you have the help, you have to have the mindset that you're not going to be doing it all by yourself for very long, and that there are ways to get help and to, like I said, automate and systemize things so that it's not you doing every single thing every single time. But you also have to have the mindset that even with a team, you're still calling the shots. So I see a lot of people hiring a team and just like giving up the reins and saying, okay, you do it, bye. And they don't understand why things aren't getting done the way they want them done because they're not leading. And I think there's a lot of lack of leadership skills and training that isn't happening in this industry. And so I think it's really important to get back to that.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about my own life and working with different people and the process of learning how to, I guess, grooming kind of comes to mind, or training, you know, people, educating people that we work with to have them produce things the way that we want to, but also educating them to this idea that, hey, if I'm doing something stupid or something I could be doing better, please tell me. Let's talk about it. You're a lot more valuable to me as a team member. I would like to back up a little bit to something you said as soon as we started talking about your event, and that is that you didn't ever expect to be hosting conferences, and you also, I can see why you did, having learned more about the MusicPreneur Mindset Summit. You referenced it as kind of more of a retreat, rightfully so. Talk a little bit about that sentiment that you never thought you'd be doing it, and maybe a little bit about why you are now.
Sure. So I won't name names. But there was a conference that was happening for many years. And about 6 weeks before everybody was set to attend this conference and people were traveling, a good deal, a lot of musicians kind of were planning their tours around it. And it was somewhere where we all looked forward to meeting up. They canceled. They were just like, we're shutting down, like no explanation, no nothing. And I had reached out to the conference because I was speaking there and I had spoken there for a number of years. And I said, well, do you need help? Like, do you just need more team members? Because I could rally some people. If you're just short on hands, I'd hate to, see such a great event canceled. In no uncertain terms, I was just told to not contact them about it and that it wasn't happening. And I just thought that was a real shame. So I contacted some of the other speakers and I said, listen, like we all had already, booked this time out of our schedule. We know the musicians were already going to go. And, why should we just throw the weekend away? It's a great time to connect, to talk about industry things, to have, that camaraderie that we all were looking forward to. And I said, let's just do it. Like, if I can coordinate something, will you still show up? And they said, yeah, sure. Like, let's do it. And I called a few more people and I went to this area and I met with the Chamber of Commerce and I said, hey, I want to throw this event. What can we do? And they got venues to pitch in and people were donating their time and their space and giving discounts to local hotel rooms and everything. And I mean, there were a lot of spreadsheets and just staying very organized. I think that's my biggest skill set that I can bring to the table. And I just, was very clear at communicating and keeping everybody updated. And it was a small group of about like 30, maybe 40 people, but it was great. And it was right on the beach and we all had a great time. And so I said, okay, like it wasn't in New York. So I said, this was great, but it was really difficult in 6 weeks' time to plan an event in a state that I did not live in. So everybody had asked me to do it again. And I was so exhausted and so, I wouldn't say traumatized, but definitely in over my head. And luckily my fellow speakers and my colleagues rallied together and definitely helped me pull it off in the end. And out of it came my weekly podcast, the MusicPreneur Mindset Podcast, because people said, well, we want to keep this conversation going. Like, this was really helpful, but like, we don't want to wait till next year. So it's all right. Well, I guess I'll make it a podcast and focus on these different kind of foundational topics. And then I said, all right, next year I'll do it, but I'm going to do it in New York. But I wanted to keep the beach feel. It just kind of added a sense of calmness and chillness, and speakers, mixed in with the attendees. It didn't feel like, oh, the speakers are here and like the ticket buyers are over here. It was very communal and just the speakers stayed for the other talks. Like, everybody was learning together. And yeah, I said, all right, we'll do it in New York. And then we did last year and everybody loved the venue. We had a great time. We had people, one of them got signed to a management deal. We had another person quit their job while they were at the summit. They got inspired and they're like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do this full time. And they quit their job. Like, we had a lot of really cool breakthroughs happen. And so I was like, all right, I guess I'll do it again. So we're just kind of going with it. And each year we just try to add some more things to it. So yeah, it's been great.
The story that you just told, is that part of the story for the summit or part of the Rockstar Advocate story?
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of one and the same. I mean, that story is how this whole summit came to be. I mean, it really was just, I kind of felt dared. Like, when they wouldn't allow me to help keep the other conference going, I kind of felt like, all right, challenge accepted. Like, when I don't get the answers I want, I tend to just create them myself. So that's really what kind of happened. I mean, the Rockstar Advocate as a whole started about 5 years ago. And that was more just kind of built out of this passion for wanting to change the conversation around self-care and what it means to slow down in this industry. Because plus years beforehand, I was told the exact opposite. And I kept doing what people told me and it wasn't getting me results and it was making me very sick. And when I finally learned how to trust to slow down and really focus on what I could bring to the table and focus on what I was working towards rather than sleep shaming other people and pulling all-nighters and trying so hard to prove to people that I could hustle and grind and do all these things that we try to brag about in the music industry, I learned I was being more successful and getting more of a sustainable income when I would just slow down and just focus on what I was there to do. And so that's how the Rockstar Advocate was born. So when it was time to do an event, I just wanted to keep those core messages integral to the event.
Sure. I have to go back to the question again, and I want to ask it a slightly different way. And your answer was great, by the way. Is that story that you just told me, is it part of the narrative that you regularly use? I wasn't aware of it, that first event that didn't happen, culminating in the first event that did happen. I'm really trying to ask if it's part of the narrative of what you have created, either online, in your podcast, at your events, or elsewhere.
Meaning the story behind the summit? I don't usually discuss that part in terms of, how the summit came to be. In full transparency, that is how the summit came to be, but I just more so kind of kept it separate rather than saying it grew out of this other conference. But that's kind of what spurred it on. But yeah, I guess to answer your question the best I can, I try to, that's not the usual narrative, no.
Sure. Well, you have a great narrative based on some things you already mentioned, or you mentioned one in response to the question the way I initially asked it, so I can understand why you would use that. It's actually pretty compelling. And I asked it again in the way that I did because it is such an amazing story. And I hope that after today it will become part of the narrative. I think it's, maybe it lends itself to a broader audience. I'm not sure, but it's pretty cool. Especially, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people probably say to themselves, me included, I don't think I'm ever going to host an event. I know that I might someday, but, and I've had people ask me that or have me consider it or challenge me to, and I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, a great story. So yeah, hope that it's an increasing part of the narrative.
I think what I learned is and it really is what entrepreneurship is about, is that you take the leap and you build your wings on the way down. I had no idea. I knew I had spoken at enough conferences to understand the pieces of it and what I would need in order to pull it off. But I see why conferences plan a year in advance, and not 6 weeks before. I definitely learned a lot. But yeah, it really, I think the same thing. In the back of my mind, I always wanted to do retreats and do events. But, when your back is up against the wall, and I guess in that moment I felt like it was, that's what spurred me on to say, well, I'll figure this out. And you're never going to feel ready. You just have to have the passion for it and let people help you. That's the biggest thing too. That was a huge lesson. I say once I was 3 weeks into planning, I was having some real emotional breakdowns, and my fellow speakers and colleagues were like, can we please just help you? Why do you feel you need to do this completely on your own? And now I have an assistant and a team to help me. But that first one was really a lesson in giving up, the control a little bit and delegating and letting people, do their part in helping me, because that definitely, that was a big lesson to learn.
When during this journey, what was the pivotal moment that said, I'm hiring a coach? And maybe there's something about that person too in the answer, but yeah, what was that moment?
That's a great question. There was a very specific moment that really pushed me to do it. I had been, this friend of mine, Jordana Jaffe, we had been introduced to each other when I was just starting one of my first companies, and we were about the same age, and she said, I could coach you through this, and that's what I do for a living. I'm a coach. And I was like, thanks. I got this, but thanks so much. You don't know the industry. You're not in the music industry. I know this. But thank you so much for your help, because to me, I still looked at entrepreneurship the same as business, and they're two different things. And she understood entrepreneurship, and I understood the music industry, and I didn't see what she could teach me. I was like, no, I understand contracts and copyrights, and that's what I'm here to teach people. And I don't need what could you possibly show me? But we remained friends, and 8 years later, I was really struggling to try to get my third business off the ground. And I had an entertainment lawyer ask to meet me for lunch. And I thought, he wants to talk about partnership or talk about some way we can work together. And I had all of my, spreadsheets and charts, and I had everything ready, and we met for lunch, and he just started talking without even asking me to show him anything. Said, I know you've got this cute little business you're trying to do, and that's great, but I don't see how it's going to work. So I know you used to be a paralegal. Why don't you come work for me? And, I'll let you build your business on the side and I'll guide you. But, I really think you'll be better off working for me and learning from me. And, you can do your business once you've got a few things under your belt. And again, I guess same thing with the conference. I just thought, well, you SOB, thanks for wasting my time. And you didn't even, nothing about me and what I'm capable of. And so I called up Jordana. I got up and left, and I just called Jordana and I said, I know it's been 8 years, but what are you offering? I want a session. Let's do this. And that was it. And that's how it started. And when she started teaching me, I was like, oh my God, there's this whole world out there of entrepreneurship that I had no idea about. And in 6 months I had a full-time business. And, it wasn't easy, but again, it was a lot of what she did with me was mindset work. It's really all on how you look at a situation can make all the difference. And
can you say her name again?
Sure. Jordana Jaffe, Gaffe. Her and her wife, Jenna, Gena, Jenna Jaffe, they are a powerhouse couple with an incredible name, Jordana and Jenna Jaffe. It's a mouthful. But her wife is an entrepreneur lawyer. So she works with entrepreneurs on getting all of their law stuff in order. And Jordana does the entrepreneur coaching. And they're a powerhouse. And I hired both of them about 5 years ago. And I haven't looked back since.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing that. So I have thought twice now, and I'm going to say her name and mention another episode of my podcast here. Back in episode 80, I had this artist named Sylvia Rose Novak on the podcast, and she introduced me to a phrase that I'd since have heard so many times, but at the time I'm not sure I'd heard it before, and she made me laugh when we were talking. But somebody had done something kind of similar, different circumstances, and when I say kind of similar, kind of like the guy you met with who was a bit dismissive without really knowing you. Well, Sylvia Rose's response in her head, which she shared with me, was, "Oh yeah, here, hold my beer. So,
yeah.
Watch me."
My kind of girl. Yeah, that's amazing.
She's delightful. Wow. Okay, that's another good story, man. I'm excited for the next one. Let's see here. Where did I want to go next? So I'm just going to mention 3 things that are on here, and then just for people who are listening, I think it'll give them a better idea of who you are, and also if they happen to hear this in time to be part of the summit or maybe think about doing it next year, they can. So 3 check boxes here on the sales page for the Mindset Summit. Get clear on your next steps to building your sustainable, I like that word, music career. The second one is learn how to get it all done without the overwhelm and burnout. I'm pretty sure every musician I've spoken to on the podcast can relate to that one. And then the third one, gain a community of other like-minded music professionals, and community, human contact, obviously, is so important. If you could fill in any blanks that might be there with a little something about what to expect at the summit, what would you say?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that I think makes us stand out is there's one panel and workshop at a time, where I know going to conferences and you got to choose between 2 that you really want to go to. You're sitting at one of them kind of overwhelmed, just thinking about what am I missing at the other one. So we do one panel and workshop at a time, and we do wellness sessions on the beach in the morning to really get us grounded and get us in the right headspace to be able to take in all the information. So we do yoga and meditation and journaling and all of that stuff. And the other thing that I think is really great about the summit is that it's stuff that you're not really going to learn at another music industry event, because like I said, we base it in entrepreneurship rather than in music industry. So we have a financial planner from Merrill Lynch coming to teach how do you pay yourself first? How can you start putting money away in a 401k or in a similar type of situation when you feel like you're not even making enough money to pay your bills? Like, how does that all work? And we've got a psychologist from Chicago coming in to talk about finding sustainable joy from within. Again, a lot of the mindset and the foundational work, because even if you have a significant other, or maybe you have a family or people around you, that's all great. But when they don't understand what it's like to do what you do, it can be very isolating. So, going up on stage and trying to get that gratification from the audience, or trying to get, your dad to say, I'm proud of you and I'm not going to ask you anymore if you're, why are you still doing this? Like at Thanksgiving every year, rather than looking for it outwardly, how can we find joy and acceptance in ourselves first? So those are just some of the things that we're really going over that aren't so much based in music, but they are based in, again, sustainable, that word sustainable, where it's like, it's not about, how do I get 10,000 fans by next month? Like, yes, there are people that can teach you how to do those things, and there are strategies for that. But what we do is go over, okay, if you're not going to get those 10,000 fans right away, we're going to help you understand why and what you should be doing with maybe those 200 fans that you currently have, and how that's going to bring you what you need to continue to 10 years from now still be doing this and being able to pay your bills and being able to feel like you've built something and you know why you've built it. We don't really reflect on why we've done something. So that's what this weekend is all about, is to really dig in there and get you understanding, why am I doing this? Like, people don't do it because it's easy, and they don't do it because it makes them feel so good, because there's so much negative energy that we have to deal with in this industry. Those are certainly not the reasons we do it. So what is the real reason that keeps you getting up every morning and going after this, even when the odds aren't in your favor all the time?
Yeah. That's good stuff. Speaking of the industry, tell me about, so you had learned a lot about the industry. You mentioned prior to that first event ever occurring and prior to some other key events in your life happening, what exactly what was it about your experience that made you so confident that you, as you were anyway, about the music industry?
Yeah, I've just always had a passion for it. I started when I was 18, interning at Atlantic Records. I had gone to Drexel University. I was part of their first graduating class for their music industry program, which is very hard to get into today, but back then there were just 40 of us, and it was a lot easier to get accepted into it, and we kind of got to shape their whole curriculum that they've got now, which was really great. I helped found Mad Dragon Records, which is their student-run record label, and what was great about that is everything was hands-on. All of our professors were adjunct professors, so they were working in the industry and then coming part-time, to teach us what it was that they did. We learned from like Bruce Springsteen's, tour manager and sound engineer, and a couple other real talented industry people. And I think that gave us the confidence starting out that, we were learning stuff that a lot of other schools weren't teaching at the time. NYU has since really changed their curriculum, and Berkeley obviously is a staple. But we were really doing a lot of it was more of a trade school, and we would take field trips to different places. We went to Detroit, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and down in Nashville, and met with the publishing agent, the performing rights agencies, and, really getting a lot of hands-on experience. And you had to have internships for 2 straight years with a music industry company that they vet ahead of time in order to graduate. So they really made sure. I left a year early with a job in the music industry at AstroWorks. So that really, that confidence came from the fact that they were pushing us that whole time to be in the field, get the experience. Don't just go get coffee for people. Sometimes that's unavoidable in the beginning, but, really make sure if you're getting coffee, then make sure you're staying there later to, be a sponge, ask to sit in on meetings, they really did a good job at prepping us of how to politely go after what it is that we wanted. And I think that was the biggest thing, that we knew, we were getting hands-on information that not a whole lot of other people our age were getting. And I think that made me confident enough to go after what I wanted. And when I did have a job, I realized I was like, no, I don't like this. I don't want this. This isn't, what I signed up for. Realizing how different it could be once you do things day in and day out. It's not as sexy anymore. It's not as alluring as it is when you can't wait to graduate. And I just always think I haven't really ever had a good track record for authority. And so I think that's the only reason that it made me become an entrepreneur. Like, I want to do it my way. I have I wouldn't say a better way, but I have my own way of doing things. And so I think that's really what forced me to quit the major labels and try to strike out on my own, because I just wanted to see a different culture. Like, I just didn't like the culture that I was seeing, and I just thought, okay, if it's not there, create it. And I don't know if it was confidence or just sheer stubbornness, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's where it all comes from. Yeah.
No, it totally does. And gave me, I was really kind of fishing for your background, and you gave me a nice slice of it there, and very directly answered the confidence bit too. That's great. I forgot to ask, but you were describing taking a left turn here, you were describing the opening part of the event on the beach. And I was going to ask you, do you have any people with a woo-woo allergy that go to that first session and just sort of tough it through, or do people kind of know when they come that, this is going to happen? Yeah. Do you ever experience that?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I think some people, when they were first thinking about it, they were like, oh, they're going to be like crystals and like fortune tellers and like all this stuff, like what's happening. But we really just keep it more about its wellness. Like, nobody was, we welcome people who want to. There are some people that do bring their crystals with them, and they've got their special journals, and, we don't begrudge anybody, but we do it more from like when we do yoga in the morning, it's like, this is just about to open up your body. Like, this is just exercising before we sit down for 6 hours. And I mean, there is a break in between, but before we sit down to learn and sit in the seat for 6 hours, let's go on the beach and stretch out. And, some people use that time to really meditate and go deep, and others just use it as a nice stretch in the morning. And, we always just tell people it is whatever you want it to be. And so we don't do too much woo stuff. I mean, I like that stuff myself, but I totally get, some people are like, more based in other certain sciences that they want, more concrete stuff. So I always say to them, with the journaling stuff too, like we do a journaling workshop on the beach, and it's whatever you want to make of it. You can sit there and visualize and the law of attraction and do what you want to do, or you can use that time to write songs or poems or just a diary entry, but it's just to get your mind clearing itself out a little bit. And so everything that we do is based in a science of why this works. We write things down because scientific studies have shown, I think you're almost like 40% more likely to reach a goal, because the way your mind processes it once your hand actually does the writing of the thoughts that you're having, rather than typing it out or rather than just speaking it. When you write something down, it stays in your brain more strongly. So that's why we do the journaling session. So we explain to everybody, why we're choosing this. There's an intention behind every session that we have at the summit, and it's not to sell anybody on any sort of, woo stuff that they don't want to ascribe to. It's like, that's cool, but if you want these goals to work, get out that pen and paper and start writing it down. And so that's basically it. I think the first year people were a little like, what are we doing? And now also I think there's been a shift, whether it's the political climate or whether it's just the way smartphones and smart devices kind of have us burning out a little bit faster. I think more people are open to yoga and to meditation, and only like everyone, whether they want to believe in it or not, are just at a point like, if this will help calm me, sure, fine. What do you got? Like, I think more people are just open-minded at this point, just to try anything to calm their mind, because I think a lot of us are just running around every day trying to survive. So yeah. Well,
I was laughing inside my head Just because the way you started the answer and mentioned the crystals, and thinking to myself, oh, I would have so much fun with those people. And not for the reasons that you or listeners might think. And for the record, I've been doing yoga since like the early 90s, I think.
Nice.
And, I'll just throw out there, I might get some haters for this, but it's become highly feminized over the years. And I think that scares a lot of people off, a lot of men off. But I get it. And, I think I heard that term recently from someone else, a Woowoo Allergy. And so, yeah, well, that's cool. I'm glad people are coming around to it. And it seems, I think I believe you sort of you have the agenda for the summit up there for people. At least I think you do, because I feel like I'd read something about that day. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I could clearly see from the speakers that you have that this is for the, to try and help nurture the rounded, the well-rounded musician entrepreneur. So I get it, and I think it's a great idea. All right. Wow, this is great. Let's talk about your podcast for a minute. And by the way, thank you for interviewing me as a guest for an upcoming episode of your MusicPreneur Mindset Podcast, and for sharing the story of, how it came about. This is a silly question, but I have to ask it because I just want to know more about you. But I'm going to call it the podcast artwork, but I'm really talking about what you have on the podcast page of your website, which I guess is technically the blog page, but where one can see all the episodes. So you have an image of yourself. Looks like a MacBook Pro. Mm-hmm. Looks like a cup of coffee and a colorful headset.
Right.
So I had to know two things. If there's a hot beverage in that cup, which I'm assuming there is it coffee or tea?
It's hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate, okay. Surprise.
But I'm drinking that right now. I've never had coffee, actually. And tea, I like that once in a while, but I'm a chocolate lover. So yeah, I usually start a morning. If it's cool enough, I usually start a morning with a cup of hot chocolate.
What if it's a warm day? What do you start it with?
Sometimes I still just do it because it's so good.
As I was asking, I'm like, man, I'll drink a hot cup of coffee no matter what the temperature, but it can get difficult. And is that headset actually one that you use for the podcast, or is that just kind of there to glam up the photo?
No, that actual photo, that is a stock image that I licensed. But it's when I saw it, because I'm not any good at photography, but when I saw it, I actually own all of those things. I have a rose gold wireless set of Beats headphones, and I thought, oh my God, like that is what I have. And I have a MacBook Pro, and I have my cup of hot chocolate on my desk all the time. So I just came across it, and I just thought, oh my God, instead of having a photographer take my stuff, I'll just license this photo. And it just worked perfectly.
Put myself in there. Yeah. No, it's great. I wouldn't have known. I'm a little sad now that it's stuck, but actually it's neat that
I know. I got to be transparent.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I wanted to ask you about the Rockstar Life Planning Bundle. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That you have this, this product on the website. And it seems to me, as I was perusing the website again today, you're a time management freak, if I can use that word.
Sure.
You really, you're passionate about it. That's a better way to say it.
Proudly.
You're passionate about time management, and we all should be. So I'm guessing that the bundle was born out of that passion and interest in helping people understand how important that is. I guess talk a little bit about why that product, if I didn't already. I'm sure there's a little more to it than what I said, but why that product, and maybe just tell people a little bit about it.
So the planner, my partner and I own the Rockstar Advocate. It's just me, but I have a college roommate, Alyssa B. Jackson, as she goes by, and she was a mechanical engineer at Drexel turned actress in LA. She's off in LA killing it. And she is just this rare unicorn of left brain, right brain expert. Like every part of her brain works at full cylinders, and she's as creative as she is technical. And it's really something to behold. And so when I love making spreadsheets and checklists and organizing things. I organize my emails and my desktop files. And if I wasn't in the music industry, I'd probably be a closet organizer for people. And, all of that stuff is totally, my mom said when she used to have to keep me occupied as a kid, she would just open up all of her kitchen cabinets and she could just leave me there, and I would organize her pots and pans and her Rubbermaid containers, and like, that's just what I love to do. So yeah, when I started making, I was taking on clients my first year, and they'd say, oh, I need help keeping track of this, or I keep forgetting how to prep for this particular thing, or what to pack when I go on tour. And so I just started making all these checklists every time they needed something. I was like, oh, that's simple. You just keep, let's create a spreadsheet for that, and let's label it and all that stuff. And I just started making all these templates, and I had shown Alyssa. We always used to do work dates together when she was on the East Coast. And she was like, this is so cool. Like, I can use this for my acting and for everything that I do. And I was like, that's awesome. And then we just kept talking, and we were sitting, I think we had gone to Barnes and Nobles or something, and we were looking for planners. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just make my own. Like, I don't know. And I don't really remember how the exact conversation came about, but we both started tinkering, and she's really good with Adobe InDesign. So she just started taking my templates and making them fit, kind of taking them and making them look good. And rather just in an Excel spreadsheet, she's like, well, let's create one on in an actual book. And so she designed it, and I kind of guided her into like telling her what my clients over the years have been struggling with. I said, they don't usually know how to plan out their newsletter very well, and they keep forgetting to stay on top of that. And she said, well, let's add a section for planning out your newsletter. And then I said, well, I know social media is a pain for them. And she's like, well, let's do a section on social media and give them some prompts on like what to post and how they can track where they're posting it. And, then I said, they're going after these vanity metrics, like how many followers and how many subscribers. I'm like, they should focus on the engagement rates, like how many opens and how many shares and how many comments. And she said, all right, let's make a space for that too. And, we just kept creating and kept talking. And over the years, we kept refining it. And people for the last 3 years were like, please make this spiral bound. This is like, that's all I want is spiral bound. And as a self-publisher, it's a lot harder to do than it should be. But it took us a very long time to find a printer that could economically provide us with books with spiral binding. And we did it this year, and we were very happy with it. And it's been selling really well. People are still buying it in August, which is great. And yeah, it's a very guided planner. It's a weekly planner that has all these different sections for your self-care, for building your connections in the music industry, for reminders on who to follow up with each week, reminders on what habits you want to track this week. And getting my biggest thing is helping people realize it's important each week to sit and reflect, because otherwise you can get so far down the rabbit hole that you forget what you were going after to begin with. And so each week there's a place to reflect, and there's prompts there to kind of guide you. And the book also comes with a lot of digital resources. So all of those templates and checklists that I've made over the years, we've spruced them up and put them on a password protected page for people to download once they have the planner. So there are financial management spreadsheets, there are packing checklists for when you go on tour, there's spreadsheets to keep all of your contacts, there's a spreadsheet with formulas in it to, if you're booking shows and you end up booking a show, it'll create a tour itinerary for you when you're done. There's all these different things that we've created over the years, and we're still doing it. She helps me out, and we just put the finishing touches. This weekend we'll be finishing up the 2020 planner, so it's ready to unveil at the summit, which we're really excited about. Yeah, it's been great. I get to do it with my best friend, and it's been really cool seeing people give us feedback, and each year we make improvements to it.
That's very cool. I had to go back and look at it, and don't make changes for me, but I'm going to make a confession. I hate spirals because I'm left-handed, but the world's not made for me when I write. But it's a funny thing. I say I'm left-handed. The outside of writing and not swapping the knife and fork in my hands, the rest of my world is right-handed. But those freaking spirals and every, writing book, any book that I write in. So I actually, in recent years, I was like, well, why don't I just turn my journal upside down or what if I need to? It works better that way. But wow, I'm so glad I asked about it, because it's a lot. I don't know, to hear you talk about it, it sounds like more than just first impression. And I see that, I'm laughing, I see Eli Lev, who's been a guest on both of our podcasts, rocking his, and it looks like an Instagram post or something.
I love that guy. He's so funny. Yeah.
He's a nice guy. I don't know if he's podcasting. He probably should if he has time. He has a lot to offer the world, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, it sounds like it's an interesting evolution for that little product that's getting big. And congratulations that you're rolling out a new one at the summit. That's going to be exciting.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's how the bundle came about. I mean, after we had the planner for a while, I started teaching time blocking, and there's a time blocking audio tutorial that comes with it. And so I was using different color markers to kind of delineate different areas of my life when I plan out my month and my week. And so then I thought, all right, well, why don't I make my marker sets? And really all my products are just things that I create for myself, and then I give them to my clients. And then if my clients really love them, then I decide to publish them and put it in my shop. So it's really just a lot of the products that come up with my clients I've had for years. But once I get the okay from them and I know that it's helpful for them, then I say, all right, well, we might as well produce these. And that's just kind of how it's evolved over the years. And so it's been a lot of fun.
And lo and behold, that's a formula that some of the smartest entrepreneurs in the world say works really well. So it sounds like it's working well for you.
Yeah.
Let me read something a snippet that I got off your website. I don't know if this is the second time I've done this or if I'm thinking about a conversation I had earlier where I was reading from somebody's website. And then I'm going to ask you a final question. But that snippet is that you design custom time management systems and help them, being musicians, implement new routines that create more freedom and balance in their daily lifestyles. The question I want to ask in closing is, what one thing, if there is one that comes to mind, what one thing do you try to offer musicians who seek a better way?
Slow down.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a great one.
I mean, that really is where it all starts, is that we rush around too much and we panic. And I always say we're reactive rather than reflective. A lot of it is just feeling like, well, I was starting on this, but then we doubt ourselves and say, well, I see other people working on this rather than what I'm working on. So maybe I should just be working on that instead. And we allow other people's actions to dictate what we focus on rather than just spending more time learning how to trust ourselves, learning to commit to something and see it through, and then tweak it once we have enough data points to really tell ourselves whether it worked or not. And that you can only go down your own path. So slow down, stay committed, do what feels right. If it doesn't feel right, trust yourself enough to walk away from it and go to the next thing that feels right, and keep trying. Like, entrepreneurship is all about being okay to sit in the mess and experiment. This whole thing is an experiment. And just like, I feel like musicians can go in the studio and experiment with songs till the cows come home. But then when it's time to promote it, all the creativity goes out the window and all the fun experimenting goes out the window. And they're just looking for like the silver bullet. And it's like, there is no silver bullet. Just treat it the same way you would treat writing a song. It's creative. It's testing things out. It's going back to the drawing board. It's doing the best that you can at all times and just learning from what you do. And it's messy, and that's okay. And, I think if we can give ourselves permission, and this comes from a former very type A perfectionist person, I think the minute I started being okay with the mess, everything started to fall into place. And I think that's the biggest thing.
I love it. All right. So if you didn't learn enough, if you're not already compelled by the conversation today, then you, listener, can go to therockstaradvocate.com to learn about the upcoming MusicPreneur Mindset Summit, the podcast, Suzs. You can also find it on Facebook, The Rockstar Advocate, and on the Instagram at RockstarAdvo. And I recommend you check out all those places. Suzs, it was really a pleasure talking with you again. It's fun that we got to do it twice in a somewhat condensed period, and I look forward to being part of the sponsor team or whatever we're called for the MusicPreneur Mindset Summit, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Our partners, our summit partners, thank you
That's
so much.
That's a good word.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a part of that. It really means a lot, and thank you so much for this platform. for me to share my story and share what we try to do here at the Rockstar Advocate. And I really can't wait to get your interview on my podcast out to our audience, because you were a wonderful, interesting guest to talk to. And thanks so much again for giving me your time.
You got it. I look forward to getting some FaceTime one of these days here soon. So good luck with the summit, and we will definitely talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Hey, thanks again for listening. If you are loving the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the various ways that you can offer your support. And again, if you're a listener, I consider you a supporter, especially if you shared it with a friend. Thank you. Have you heard of Bandzoogle? Yep, they're powering websites for musicians all over the world. Their easy system will get you online fast. They have tons of mobile-friendly templates to help you custom design your site and content. It's built for musicians by musicians. They make it easy to sell merch, grow your email list, integrate your socials, and they offer support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans are affordable. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a free trial, and be sure to use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO. Look for show notes and links to most everything mentioned in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Thanks so much for listening. With a whole lot of gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.